6:40 on June 9th, and I will call this budget meeting to order. Chairman Shope is out sick, as well as Commissioner Boyd and Bergdorf. They're letting me know that. So with that, I will take a motion to approve the agenda. Motion approved. So moved. And Commissioner Harrison, will you give the invocation, please?
I will. Pray with me. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for this day, the blessings you bestow upon us. We thank you, Lord, for this county and the state that we've lived in, and we're so blessed and so thankful for all the many blessings that you give to us. We ask you, Lord, to be with us during this meeting. Help us, Lord, to use our collective wisdom to make good decisions and good judgments for the county. Forgive us for our sins, and thank you, Lord, for your Son, Jesus. And it's in his name we pray. Amen.
I got ahead of myself. I had a motion to approve the agenda. Second. Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Recognition of the people signed up. Mr. Shoemaker.
Chris Shoemaker, 1018 Silver Maple Lane, Portland. I'll be quick. I know you guys are setting meeting dates for budget tonight. All I'm going to ask is, when you meet with department heads, yes, by all means, do that 9 o'clock in the morning. When you finally get a good presentation, when you set those, try to, kind of like what we do at 6:30 at night, try to set something that the common working folks can attend, as opposed to just a general county commission meeting, because, well, this is where the magic happens. So if y'all can do one of those where we have the ability to come and speak to you on the individual lines, then that would be phenomenal. So, yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Brown? Drown? No, that's Drown. Drown, yeah. Brown's the line. Excuse me.
I'm Wayne Drown, 1120 Point Road, Portland. I'm really here to ensure that, since we're having additional hearings, that the volunteer fire departments will have a chance to be part of those hearings. Because I know some of the amounts, I don't know if they're set in stone, because none of them set in stone, but what we're hearing the volunteer fire departments are getting this year so far is less than we got last year, which we don't need to move that way. We need to move the opposite direction. And what was provided, the increase last year was good, and it's helping the fire departments, but we've got to continue. We're not where we need to be to be able to get the things protective equipment, apparatus, and all that's within their service dates and service done on the equipment.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
I'm Rebecca Goddard. My address is 2339A New Hope Road in Hendersonville. And,
I can't do it. I start writing when I'm talking.
okay, so I just was looking at the agenda online earlier, and I noticed that the GNRC is on that, and I personally don't think that organization has a place in Sumner County. Metro is Metro, Davidson is Davidson. Let them keep that Californication that they have going there and build a wall around Sumner. We don't want that. Many of us in Sumner County moved from the insanity of overdevelopment, Davidson, California. We don't need it here. It's not wanted here. We don't need it here. No one wants Highway 25 to be a highway with Irvine Spectrum shopping center there. No one wants high-density housing. No one wants public transportation in Sumner County. There are people that benefit from it financially, but the citizens moved here because they didn't want any of the things that were failures. And Nashville is a failure. I mean, it's gross. I don't go there because I left that. I left a home of 55 years that I owned outright in California with an ocean view and 75-degree temperatures, 330 days a year, to come here to be away from the insanity that big developmental corporations mixed in with the government and everyone getting pockets line. We don't want that in Sumner County. I don't know why anyone thinks that we do, and the people that do think that we do clearly aren't here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Have a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
you might want to take a look at those minutes, because it looks like through there, you were making some motions, but yet you weren't listed as being one of the members present.
With that addition, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You know, this is high bar. I have no report. Mr. Mayor, do you have anything?
Yeah, we'll just have a presentation from Mr. Skipper to answer some questions with suspension of the rules.
Everybody okay with suspending the rules? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Skipper, did you say that? Yeah, come on up. Thank you.
Sorry, Mayor, I've got more paper. More trees. Well, and I feel like I've already been introduced. Thank you. I'm glad it's actually, I appreciate the comments before our conversation. A good opportunity to explain who we are, where we work, who we benefit across Middle Tennessee, and any questions that you have about likely the annual dues that we provide each February for local governments to incorporate to the budgeting process. But Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, any particular place you'd like me to start? Probably handing out the material.
Beginning.
It's always sage advice, isn't it? These are slippery. I'll get these on my bag.
There you go. Did you pick up your one? I handed mine off. You have me one for long.
All right, so I've got a few things for you. The loose leaf paper here. We'll get to that in a minute, but that's a little bit of information about who we are in the context of these estimates that we provide each February to you all. But I'll start with the folder of information here, and just really from the beginning, which is 1965. That was the year the state legislature created development districts across the state of Tennessee. So all 95 counties and municipalities are part of one of 9 development districts across the state of Tennessee. We were created originally as the Mid-Cumberland Council of Governments Mid-Cumberland Development District. There were 2 entities that merged in the 80s to form what became rebranded as the Greater Nashville Regional Council. So Nashville is in the name, and that's useful to us when we're at a conference in Kansas City. I understand the angst that it has here in Middle Tennessee when somebody from our office is out in Humphreys County or Houston County introducing ourselves, and we've got Nashville in the name. But we were created by the Tennessee General Assembly of '65 for 2 reasons. One, state governments were being incentivized by the federal governments to create development districts or councils of governments. Those are interchangeable terms. To convene local elected officials to better negotiate with the state government on how the state was using federal funds to invest in local communities. There were a lot of decisions made by state governments in the 40s and 50s that local communities thought were problematic for their population. So Congress created a requirement that in order to access federal transportation dollars or dollars for economic development projects or community development projects or social services, that they required state governments to work with local elected officials within their area. And so that's fundamentally the reason why we were created, was to convene local elected officials and their constituents to engage with the state on how they were using and spending federal dollars within communities across Tennessee. Our district represents Trousdale County all the way to the west side of the region at the Tennessee River. So Stewart, Humphreys, and Houston are our western edge. We go to the Kentucky state line, include Robertson, Montgomery counties, for example, all the way down south through Williamson County. So our regional council body includes 52 city mayors from across that geography, 13 county mayors, and then the county mayor in each county is given an opportunity to appoint 2 non-elected officials from the county government to represent issues of business and commerce and community development, just local subject matter experts that can make sure that the local community is well represented. The other reason why we were created is largely focused on helping rural communities plan for their future, whether that future included a really ambitious plan for economic development, or if that future included a really a focus on land conservation. So we help communities who are interested in both sides of the spectrum in terms of conservation and economic development achieve their goals through technical assistance. Many small towns and rural counties, even some fast-growing counties, don't have the in-house staff to do all the work necessary to do grant applications, to manage grant projects, to do local planning, to pursue funding for their capital improvement projects that are important to the residents, to solve issues of solid waste, housing, environmental quality, water quality, for example, air quality, things that are important to constituents. We end up being an extension of local government staff to help solve some of those problems. And we do so across, of course, across a regional context so that we can get you collaborating with your counterparts across the region. So those are the 2 reasons we were established by the legislature. One is to convene local elected officials to participate in the process of deciding how federal funds are spent in their communities. And 2, as an extension of local government staff to provide additional capacity in the form of technical assistance to help you with your community development planning projects. We have 85 staff members. A good percentage of them live outside of Davidson County. Most of our time and attention is focused outside of Davidson County, from Trousdale over the river counties on the western edge, doing grant writing, project administration for utility, other capital projects that locals have been awarded money for. Helping we're on-call staff planners for communities across Middle Tennessee where they don't have they might have a planning commissioner or board of zoning appeal, but they don't have their own staff. A contract with us to provide staffing services. That's a role that we've played since the state dissolved the local planning office that used to be an ECD. And then at the regional level, we convene folks across Middle Tennessee to keep everybody, including state agency, in compliance with federal regulations that require that collaboration as a string attached that comes out of Congress. And so we convene mayors and TDOT and transit agencies and constituents to decide our transportation future. Our transportation policy board must approve every single dollar that's allocated to the state and spent in our region before it can happen. That's a check to make sure that the state DOT is spending money in a way that is consistent with your vision. We convene folks on a regular basis to figure out what we're going to do about landfills at the Middle Point closes down in Murfreesboro. Like it or not, that is a regional issue because many of our counties send their garbage to Middle Point, and once that landfill closes, there'll be a domino effect on the other landfills that we use across Middle Tennessee. So we're the organization that helps do the research, do the planning, convene the policymakers, facilitate the cooperative decision-making that's required to solve some of these big problems that are outside of the grasp of an individual jurisdiction to address. In your packet, you've got our annual report for fiscal year 2024, which I think does a good job illustrating where we work across Middle Tennessee. There's a map in there that shows all of our grant making, all of the direct services that we provide to constituents across Middle Tennessee. It also describes our 3 big areas of work. The first is aging disability services. So one of our roles as a regional organization is to serve as the area agency of aging and disability. That means we're entrusted with taking all the federal funds that flow through the Tennessee Department of Disability and Aging and work with local elected officials to decide how to spend that. whether we spend more on transportation services for older adults or nutrition or in-home services. We're the organization that takes that money, goes out and procures the provider network, monitors the quality, and then directly serves Middle Tennesseans with one of those services. We're also the entity that is entrusted to provide the unbiased source of information about Medicare. So if you're nearing retirement and don't know where to turn other than the companies that are advertising their daytime TV, we're the place that you can go to understand what your options are, including prescription drug plan comparisons. And on an annual basis, we save Middle Tennesseans thousands and thousands of dollars, sometimes per household, on prescription drug plans by just getting them aligned to the right one. So aging and disability services constitutes the largest share of our budget and the largest share of our staffing. About 40 social workers within our organization that work directly with Middle Tennesseans, getting them enrolled into programs and services that help them stay in their home as long as possible without having to go to assisted living, and then working with the providers to provide services. A lot of our money flows through the Mid-Cumberland HRA, the Human Resource Agency. We fund them to do like Meals on Wheels, for example, or the Rural Paratransit Services. That is money that we're getting from the federal or state government and then awarding it, subcontracting it to like the Mid-Cumberland HRA to provide those services. And they do some additional fundraising through private donations. Like they send out mailers every year asking for individual contributions to help supplement the grants that are available to provide the services, because the need far outstrips the money that's available. So that's I'm going to wrap up and get to Q&A here in a second, but that's the first of the three main areas of work that we do. The second is community and regional planning. And I mentioned we work to convene partners across the region to prepare regional plans for transportation, solid waste. We do a lot in terms of improving the water quality of our streams and rivers. We are preparing an economic development strategy, which isn't about proposing a specific approach to economic development. It's to understand how communities are growing, to make sure that the infrastructure investments made with federal funds are aligned with that vision, so that we're not recruiting headquarters or manufacturing facility over here, but improving roads over here, right? So we just, our job is to not tell people how we should be developing, but to make sure there's alignment between the public policies and the private sector and the wishes of the economic development officials. So those are examples of some of the regional planning that we do, but like I mentioned, many communities rely on us to staff their planning departments, their boards of zoning appeals. That is underwritten by some funding from the state, but otherwise it's a fee that we charge to those communities for that service. Some communities hire us to do comprehensive plans. We're working with Rutherford County now on their comprehensive plan. We're working with the City of Portland. Some of you have been involved in that. Those are two completely different visions. Portland is interested in knowing how and where to grow, redevelop downtown. Rutherford County is mostly interested in land conservation, making sure that the growth is going towards the cities and protecting the rural landscape. So we're agnostic when it comes to how a community should grow. We listen to the community, give them resources and best practices, and make sure their policies reflect that vision. So the day-to-day zoning change requests that are coming in to the planning department, planning commissions, county commissions are made in accordance with local preferences. And then the third big area of business I'll talk about is economic and community development. We have a couple of roles here. The one many know us for is to be the grant writer for local communities. We will write a grant for just about any state, federal agency, or nonprofit foundation. If you need assistance in grant writing, we'll do the research. We'll figure out what makes a competitive grant application. We'll help you with the budget proposal. We'll get that submitted. And if you get that award and you don't have anybody to manage that project for you, then you can hire us to manage that project for you as though we are part of your staff, and we're sort of there if you need us without you having to go to the private sector and often spend quite a bit of money on that type of service. And some communities elect to do that. Some communities elect to use us. There's no requirement that you use us for that stuff, but that's what we're here for. But the other thing we do in economic and community development is that state agencies do entrust us with some of their grant making. So the Tennessee Department of Tourist Development, for example, the Tennessee Arts Commission, they allot a certain amount of money to be awarded out across Middle Tennessee, and we convene the process to do those competitive applications and make the awards. And actually, as part of our operating budget, about half of our operating budget is pass-through money. So it's either those grant awards that I'm talking about there, where we're grant making, or we're paying for the services for the older adults that we're servicing through our aging disability services. So those are the three big areas of work: our history and the material and the packet that will help explain a little bit more about what we do. But more importantly, how to get in touch with us and the right person if there's any assistance from the organization. So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, any specific questions you want me to?
I guess I ought to go ahead and confess that you probably are here as a result of me. But
well, thank you. Thank you.
First of all, well, I don't know. You might hold that.
Well, that's okay.
But first of all, the name Greater Nashville Regional Council. I said that day I was born and raised in Nashville, and I will never ever go back. Don't want to go back to Nashville, but I don't want to be drawn into a well. It appears to me, and you tell me how I'm wrong, that Nashville is the center of all of this, and we sort of coalesce around that, and it's how can we benefit Nashville? How can we have better transportation to get people in and out of Nashville from Sumner or whatever? In other words, I'll just be quite frank with you. I'm not for a lot of development or uncontrolled growth. Am I seeing this incorrectly?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to speak to your perspective on the growth issues or Nashville itself. I think from our agency's perspective, we're agnostic to the path that Nashville's chosen for itself. And a lot of this is just market forces and market factors beyond the control of government. Government's trying to keep up with land use policies and zoning and infrastructure. All the things that need to be provided by government are in Middle Tennessee and Tennessee and the nation are kind of falling behind all the development that's happening. So most of our communities, and I'd say including pockets of Davidson County, have more of a sentiment like we need to do a better job managing growth and directing growth into the areas that can support it. As an organization, we know that conservation of open space, farmland, the natural resources, the natural beauty that attracts people to Middle Tennessee, once that's gone, right? But a property can be developed many times over the course of a century. It can be developed, it can be redeveloped, and so it's really important to us we get a good balance. And it's not for us to tell local community how to develop. We're there to help you listen to your constituents and formulate a plan that is aligned with the preferences of the local community. And then we're there to help you see how that would perform within the context of the region, because no matter what we think about neighboring counties, there's no arguing the relationship exists on the transportation network. The relationship exists, right? We've got a lot of traffic on our roads that are going from Florida to Michigan, but there are a lot of traffic on our roads that are going from Hendersonville to Cool Springs, from Nashville to Clarksville. And so our organization has the computer models, the data collection and the computer models to predict how all that stuff works well. So you can see the impact of another community's choices on your own infrastructure. So that's the value of the regional aspect here, is that there's so much influence in terms of what's happening, shoppers, employees, residents. A lot of that is driven by decisions that are not constrained by political jurisdiction. So I'd say we're agnostic to the choices individuals and communities are making, but we help make sure that you understand the implications of the choices that your neighbors are making, because we're the organization that holds the models, the research, the data that speaks to that challenge.
Are you a Nashville native?
Well, actually, Columbia, Tennessee is where I went to middle school, high school. First started elementary school in Goodlettsville, spent a lot of time in Hendersonville. So I love my job because I grew up not really thinking about the specific place. I thought of the region. My family lived across Middle Tennessee. So that shapes my perspective on the importance of communities across our area working together effectively, because I was very fluid across the geography, at least my family was.
I really appreciate you coming and bringing this stuff and explaining. A couple of major problems I have is the fact that the only people I see that are giving you your working orders, so to speak, are mayors. Now, that's not an attack on our mayors in any way, shape, or form, but as a commissioner, my motivation is different. I answer to the people. The mayor is constantly trying to solve the problems that are a fire ongoing basis. And so what I find that organizations like you or Forward Sumner, for instance, the emphasis is on, well, let's build more roads. Let's take care of these immediate problems rather than the forward planning. And as a builder in the past and as a planner, I realize that the balance of the relationships between agriculture, residential, commercial, and industrial, i.e. jobs, is very precarious and very fragile. And it was in a meeting a couple of years ago with the then president of Forward Sumner, who turned me on to some information that I had not known, that Sumner County sent 50,000 citizens outside the county every day to go to work. That's 1/4 of our population. It seems to me that the most important thing we could do is keep our people within our county. Where I come from, we referred to everything outside the big city as a bedroom community. And creating a situation where you have these satellite cities or counties outside the big city of Nashville, we, by very definition, become basically the feeder for the work that goes on there. And it's really important that a county stands on its own economic feet, because you probably know that a residential house, as far as its return for the property taxes it pays, I think pretty much the national statistic, and I think it's fairly consistent with what's going on in Tennessee. Every dollar we pay is a property tax. We use $1.23 or $1.25 or somewhere. So residential is a loser. We need more commercial. We need more industrial. We need more jobs here. But I don't see that organizations like yours are helping us in any way, shape, or form. And I don't know that it's your job to do so. But we need help keeping our people in the county, living here, spending, we don't need people commuting an hour and a half in each direction on 386 to get to Cool Springs or something, when we could have businesses here, homegrown or brought in, that would provide jobs for those people. And so I don't know if it's just responding to the immediate needs of a mayor, which are totally legitimate. We've got gridlock on 31 in Gallatin. We got to do something about it. We need 3 lanes in each direction on Broadway, not 2. I mean, those are short-term solutions for a long-term problem. And the long-term problem is planning as best you can for the county to grow in a balanced form. We've got a lot of things against us. The state will not allow us to charge impact fees on housing. That would help us sculpt can you talk about what you could do to help us as the representatives of the people? And here again, I'm not picking on the mayors because they represent the people too, but their needs are more urgent as a rule and different than the county who are, for most part, trying to look down the road and take care of their constituents.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you're spot on, like, we're governed by the mayors who tend to represent executive branch function of government, right? So we try to do the best we can to make sure we're staying connected to the legislative branch, whether it be at the county commission, city council, state legislature. Spent a lot of time with Leader Lambert, who's worked with us for a long time, and we've talked a lot about a lot of issues in Sumner County over the years. So I think, you know, impact fees, that's another good example where part of what we do is try to see local elected officials to go tell that story at the legislature in a little bit different ways than the County Mayors Association or TML would do, because they are representing sort of the business of the county government, the business of the city government, and we're representing in a complementary way, not in a competitive way, more of just how the issues are impacting our region. But most of our day-to-day work, despite being the regional council being made up primarily of mayors, city mayors, and county mayors, county executives, most of our work is working directly with local government staff across the region on things like you're talking about, site development, getting sites ready for jobs, you know, attracting reinvestment into a Main Street program in a community that used to be thriving back in the 40s, 50s. That's where we spend most of our efforts on a day-to-day basis. Most of our products, the high-profile products, are like the regional transportation plan. But I'd say like adding a couple of lanes to a roadway, we can debate the merits of that, but that was probably something that was decided 20 years ago. We've been sitting around waiting on the money to do it. So our long-range plans, I think, sometimes they shortchange the future. Not necessarily because we don't understand the perspective of the local constituency or the legislative branch. It's because they have projects that were ideated so many years ago, and we just don't have the resources to get them implemented. We try as staff, though. We run, and I know the mayor knows this personally, but I mean, we spend so much time in the future doing scenario planning. What happens if you grow this way versus that way? How does it change your liabilities as a government to provide infrastructure? What is the best place to grow based on local preferences, or where you have farmland that you want to preserve, or where you have impaired streams? And so I think from the staff perspective, we are very much in tune with the perspective that you share. Even though we are governed by the mayors across the region. And many of those mayors did come from their local legislative body. So they too have that perspective, even though they have the pressure of the day-to-day management of the local government.
Well, all that to say, and this is a little pushback to you, is if a quarter of our population is working outside the county, and you've been around since 1965, something's not working.
Well, but we don't, like, somebody chooses, right? They choose to move here to get a job somewhere. They want to live in Sumner County instead. It's our job, if somebody wants to work in the county that they live, we want to create those opportunities with you. And it's not, it's an unfortunate, you don't like that number, but it's not an uncommon number across the country. In our region, 1 in 3 Middle Tennesseans live in a different county than they work. It's not unique to Sumner County. A lot of people in Davidson County don't live in Davidson County. They are commuting to Cool Springs, Franklin, Murfreesboro, Clarksville. There are probably folks, I can give you the numbers of folks that commute from Davidson County to Sumner County to work. But in the end, how do we make sure that somebody is not having to live in a county different than they work, or that they're having to work in a different county than they live? But people might choose that, especially with 2 working adults in the household. Typically, one is going to be close to work and the other one's not. So that's just the daily struggles of trying to find a house that you can afford next to 2 jobs.
I know we're never going to get it 100%, because I also know that we have 25,000 people coming here from other places to go to work. At least that's what I was told when I had that meeting. But the fact of the matter is we appear not to have enough well-paying jobs in the county. And so that's one of the things that I would encourage
development, making sure companies are seeing your talent, and that your talent is trained for the jobs that want to locate here. That's kind of what we're doing behind the scenes. And when it comes to like the transportation plan that we have, it does surprise people to know that Nashville, even though it's 40% of the NPO is the geography for the transportation planning. It's not all 13 counties, but Sumner's part of that. They're 40% of that population, but they typically get about 25% of the money. So a lot of investments are going to support economic development objectives in the neighboring counties over the last few decades. Is what the metrics are. But we don't have the kind of about 40% of the population, but typically about 25% of the money. And I can give you fresh numbers, but the last time
What was?
For the transportation grants that flow through our transportation policy board, when you compare, we always compare. We don't make decisions based on these metrics. We base our recommendations as where's roadway safety issues, where's traffic congestion, where are economic development objectives, where is there a local vision for the project. But we always see how it shakes out. We compare spending to population, we compare spending to vehicle miles traveled on roadways, just to look to see how the spending is aligned to the observable metrics that we all see in front of us.
So then what was the stat again? 40% of what?
Well, the key takeaway is that Davidson County received, if you define equity as being your share of the population, they are historically well under that. As their percentage of the funding is much less than their percentage of the population, much less than their percentage of the traffic congestion, much less than their percentage of the traffic fatalities. And that's not by design. That's just the process is agnostic to. We're not trying to get any one community money. We're trying to get communities money to achieve certain things that they're after.
Well, but that's also a function of the population in Nashville has been pushed out to these bedroom communities.
A lot of people do move out for once they have school-age kids to neighboring
For the same reason Mr. Hyde wouldn't want to move back to Nashville. So, yeah, I think this is a problem that if we could solve that, the wear and tear on our roads, road rage, there would be so many things would be radically different if people could live 5 to 10 minutes away from them rather than an hour and a half.
I still get roadways.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Well, this is, I know y'all.
How many interrupt? One thing that's important I want to point out is that dues are required to get certain funding.
Yeah, so your dues primarily go to provide required match to state and federal grants.
Okay.
Some of those grants are keeping you eligible for the really big time money that comes out of Congress for infrastructure investments. Sure. Without the NPO process, there's no eligibility for that money. And then the state's contribution to development districts, which is the TCA that you're probably referencing, required that I provide proof that the local governments paid their dues for the year.
Okay. So you're a non-governmental organization.
We're governmental.
You are?
Yeah, but we're service oriented. We're not a taxing authority, so we can't. Our money comes from you all, from the state, or from the federal government. So we don't do our own taxes.
David, what was our portion that we got from them last year because of our membership?
I'd have to look back and see. I'm not sure right off.
Do you know off the top of your head?
What your dues were?
No,
the money we get for that.
Well,
I 1 year printouts. I didn't update it for this meeting, but I can if you'd like me to. The second thing there.
You can just send it to me. We'll put it on the.
Yeah, that was I had wrote fiscal year 2023, but
versus having him just try to pull it up out of his memory. He can just email it to me. I'll bring it to the budget hearing. I'll be happy to bring it to you.
No, I was looking for the handouts. I'll point you to it though. It's this one here, what I had wrote on the top. But in fiscal year 2022, we did counseling sessions, 900 residents, 69,000 meals across the county, 5,800, close to 6,000 transportation trips. So there's $830,000 of direct investment through aging and disability services. That's just direct. That's just like we spent that money in Sumner County, $830,000 for aging and disability services. We have $110 million in our transportation improvement program for projects in Sumner County, and then it fluctuates year to year, but the level of tourist development grants and arts grants that we're providing, because those are competitive they're smaller, but they're really impactful to local communities and nonprofits that we're awarding that out to.
Mark may be talking about, we've got a couple of grants, one of them's for like is it 258, and then some other grants and planning, and then those grants, and they may have been involved with you, I'm not sure. That may be what he's referencing.
That's actually what I'm referring to.
Yeah, I think is it Route 258, I believe. Don't hold me to the number, we've got a grant right now for it, I believe it came through.
Okay.
258 goes from 31 to over to Bridgetown.
Yeah, I think that's the grant.
You also help with MHRCA and
Yeah,
that's what we also do. So when they
I
say
believe
we're
they're
getting
involved in that.
grant, some of that's coming from.
almost all of their federal funding is coming through us. But they are fundraising. They do a really, they do a really good job getting non-governmental money into the mix. And they do a great customer service.
Sure. Any other questions for Mr. Skipper? Thank you so much for coming, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anytime, and I'd love to find a way to get anybody who's interested more plugged into the policy.
Well, we've got numbers here, right? I think I'll have more questions.
I'll leave this for you. I think you gave me that. I'll leave that. All right. Well, I don't envy
You. Let me give that for
the budget meeting. It's always fun for me here.
Yeah, that's for the meeting.
Well, thank you for coming. It was my email you were responding to, and I wish I could have been more descriptive in what they wanted. I just didn't know.
It's okay. We're here. Take care.
Take care.
Mr. Mayor, you have any report? Mr. Long, you're up.
The first item is setting up the dates for the second hearing. If you look on page 27 and 28 versus, just reprinting stuff again, that's actually part of those earlier slides. The two items you really need to address right now, and I think Mr. Becker and Mr. Coates already working on the first one, is the hearing with the school department. But the other two main items right now that need to be handled is the second hearing with the county departments and your long-term planning. Since the schools are going to be, as far as I understand, this coming Monday, you may want to wait sometime early in July to do your second hearings with the departments. The reason being is, if the school's budget's not accepted this coming Monday, then you got to give them at least 10 business days for them to come up with another presentation. So it may be the easiest logistically for you to wait that 10 days out early in July. Because right now, can't make
July 1st, June 30th, July 1st.
June 30th commission.
Is that when we vote on budget?
Yeah, but there's not enough time to do publication of your second hearings now, so you're going to be into July. Because you've got to have the second.
None of this problem with me when he said he was.
Well, it was on the slides from last month, so here's what we got left. You need to have your second hearing with your department, your long-term planning. Those are going to take quite a bit of time. Probably review revenue if you want to. Matt mentioned that. And then the other thing is you're going to need to, if you don't approve the school's budget Monday, or the budget committee doesn't, then you're going to need to allow them for a second hearing, and it needs to be at least 10 business days.
But as we talked about, they're within $5, but we already told.
That's what I've seen.
So I would err on not going worst case. I would err on we're probably right. So through, because it's what we told them. It's not fair to say, hey, we'll give you this much money and come back and say, never mind, that's not enough.
I'm saying just to wait out to see what you guys probably do.
But if we're working on a time clock, it's getting into June 30th.
You're not going to be able to make June 30 because you've got to actually publish the budget 10 calendar days before, after the 10 business days, after the hearing with these departments, you have to prepare the budget, you're going to have at least 10 calendar days. And the 10 calendar days, the paper only takes on Thursday. Tuesday for the following Thursday, so it's going to make it, right now, you're not going to make the June 30 day.
So, I hope you understand, we could not do next Tuesday or Wednesday because why?
If you want to do the Tuesday and Wednesday, you can do that. But if you need a second,
meet all the deadlines, because then it would have everything.
You got to get to the paper, so let's see. We'd have to have everything approved, and the problem being, we're going to have it back to the paper on Tuesday for the following Thursday, which is closer to 10 days. See, the newspaper has a timeline
No,
too.
that's right, so if we do it Tuesday, Wednesday,
Mhm.
gets us to the paper on Thursday, and that publishes on the 20th, which would be 10 calendar days before the 30th.
They don't publish on the 20th. They only publish on the Thursday, and you can, I believe it's a Thursday, you can have it there Tuesday. You have it there Tuesday by noon to publish only on Thursday. So that's what's limiting you. It's not you go, lack of capability. The paper only publishes on certain days, so you'll have to have it there completely finished Tuesday by noon to make it Thursday. The previous one, that if you get it there that Tuesday by noon, then they can do it the following Thursday. Okay. That's the newspaper. That's why I'm saying Dylan was correct if it wasn't for that particular rule. So that's why I'm saying probably right now you're most prudent, and I'm going to be the 23rd through the 7th gone.
Does that also exclude holidays? Because you've got Juneteenth in there too.
10 business days for the school, but it's 10 calendar days for the publication. So, and you already had more than 10 days for your departments between the first and second one. So if the schools pass on the 9th, then really you can have your meeting anytime. It's still going to push into July though early. Other than the week of the 23rd, I'm not going to be here that week. That was one vacation. Try to avoid the 30th because you're approving the budget on the 30th. Well, that's what I said. That's what I mentioned last month about the steps left. And, since you're looking at the 16th, you could. It's the 19th there. That's not marked. The Juneteenth's a holiday for the building. And I think a lot of it is because the church don't usually want to do Wednesday. So it probably puts you down to the 17th or the 20th. So I'm saying, do you guys want to do a whole day meeting too because of long-term planning?
I can't be here on the 20th.
It may make July 1st.
We have opioid meetings on Wednesday, so it's not completely out of the question.
I could do it first.
So you're saying we would need to do, we've got next Monday with education, and then after that, it's departments, and we can do any day after that.
With the departments, you can do anytime. We've already noticed them all.
Okay.
You just got to wait for school. So maybe the easiest thing versus you guys trying to determine your calendar, if we have Miss Allison send out like maybe the 1st and maybe 2nd and the 3rd and maybe the 8th and see who all's available on those.
If we do any of those, will that hit the correct timeline for the July commission?
I think you're going to have to push it because your July is the 21st. That's what I'm saying. If you do it on the 1st or 2nd, we get it all back
to be in June. It needs to be the end of June.
Yeah.
I don't want to push it twice.
Well, you've got the commission meetings on the 21st. You could have a special call on the 28th just for the budget. Or reschedule it. Reschedule, push it a whole week forward. Takes off a lot of pressure. Because you're down to your second hearing in your long-term planning.
But you're correct to do that at this meeting.
No, the commission meeting.
Mr. Chairman?
Well, you'll have to do that from the floor.
Right, I'm just saying.
Well, yeah, I'm just
trying to make sure before we, do you see any issue with that for July percent for a week? Right now?
No,
I'm not gonna hold you to it.
This time, I don't.
I just don't want to pick a date and then realize that it still is not gonna work, so I wanna make sure.
It might be the best plan is to try to push that meeting in July to the 4th Monday, and that gives everybody plenty of time.
And then
We should be
able
to pass it then.
First week in July.
I wouldn't even offer that 8th then in that email. It really needs to be the
First, second, or third.
Yes.
We'll have her send out and see if we can get a consensus of at least 4 of your members, first, second, third. Would you like to start like maybe 10 a.m. to 4, 5, 6, and maybe you knock out everything whenever it ends? Do you guys prefer early? I'm an early person, or do you prefer late?
what day we're talking about.
First, second, third.
We don't have to, just first, second, or third, sometime that week.
Because we can start as early as 7 a.m. if you wanted to, or 10 a.m., 7, 8, 9, 10, whenever.
I do want to, I think someone made a good point earlier about it's easier for some of the public to be here later at night. So I'm not saying we need to start at 6 p.m. because I don't want to be here till 2 a.m. But
We'll start at 10 and try to aim for 10 to 6. Get all your stuff, or you think it'll be that long?
concerns.
Probably 11 to 6.
If you went from 10 to 6, that gives the general public time to come. We can always suspend the rules and allow them to speak.
Sure, but you're just gonna have to be cognizant of that,
Yes.
otherwise.
Is that kind of what our working theory is? Ms. Allison will email asking for, or is that something that I need to get Matt or I to do?
She can email to all the members and ask you for consensus.
First, second, or third, 10 to 6.
And you can just do everybody plan maybe for a late lunch.
And then on the commission night for June 30th, I guess we'll need to put on the agenda to push the next meeting, correct?
Yes. Now, are we assuming, or are we sure that we won't be able to vote on it? Because the limitations, you have your second hearing, and the limitations, you've got to have it by Tuesday at noon for the Thursday.
Okay, so the 30th is completely out.
Because you're going to have to get your budget, put it back together, resend it out.
Unless you can do it by the 17th, if I was right. The 17th would be a Tuesday, submittal for Thursday, the 19th would give us the 10 calendar days. That's the only way. I'm not saying it's doable, I'm saying that's the only way that it would.
We would have to have it together on
The 15th.
Yeah, we'd really have to on the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, the 15th? Yeah, the 16th. But you're going to have to actually have it ready, proved, and all the stuff from the schools ready.
Right.
Because we actually publish the full budget with nonprofits, so whatever hearings you have, we got to get it, reconsolidate it, re-verify it, and get it ready for the paper. And we'll have it pretty much ready, we'll just be doing changes, so.
Sure.
If you met this next week of the 9th through the 13th, like on the 12th of June, if you met, so if we did that, but you got to make the assumption the school's going to go through perfectly.
Jerry, should we do the school this week? You need to get that posted tomorrow. Let's do it Friday.
Okay. I would like to do it. Commissioner Conley, your point, I would like to do it. I'm with you, I'd like to do it in June, but
Yeah, no, I mean,
I don't want to rush things just to rush to
Yeah.
make that date, but also I want to be, if there is a way to do it, I'd love to.
I was looking for clarification more than anything, because I was a little confused as to if the 30th was still an option.
And
It sounds like it's
the paper.
it's the newspaper, the issue.
And the other one, if you're going to hear the school budget, which is your largest, or all the departments, again, how much notice do you want to give the public? I know a lot don't show up, but you still want to give them enough time to see if they can get off work if they want to do it to them.
Absolutely.
So if we do those short notices, I'm afraid you'll hear some backlash on that. That's another reason I didn't mention doing it like that. I was afraid you'd hear some back on it. So it is possible, deal, but you're going to have short notice for the public.
Might be harder, too hard to do.
We can logistically do it with you if you want to, but you're going to have short notice for the public. And
I'm fine with it, I just didn't want to push it to,
I agree, just better to do it in June.
I don't want to keep it in. Okay, everybody good with that plan?
Okay, so let's repeat what the plan is.
July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, you're going to receive a notice to see which members can show up on those days from 10 to 6. We're going to notice with the intent to put where the public and or some of the things such as the volunteer fire departments can talk early or late in the day. That way, if they come in at towards 6, they can get off work and they can speak for a few minutes, 5 minutes, a 5-minute discussion.
Well, the chairman can do that as it progresses.
So we'll kind of prepare the agenda at that format too. If that's my understanding of what the committee wanted.
That's what I understand. Does that need to be a motion, or can that just be?
Oh, we'll just do it. I mean, there's no. Everybody's good on good item 2. Mr. Schoen said he wanted to look at your revenue for the budget, so In the past, when we do them just on the sheet, it's a little more difficult, so I want to put them up here on the PowerPoint, so it makes me easy. All the PowerPoints should be on your table, they're numbered. If you want to take notes, follow along, we'll keep it for later. The first three tables are going to show a lot of details, but I don't really expect anybody to follow along because starting on the fourth slide, it's going to have a lot of stuff consolidated back up that you can't follow along on. So the first is to get you the background. This is the revenues we're going to look at. We're not going to look at every single revenue because we would be here all night. These are your local revenues. These are what we budgeted for 2025 fiscal year. On the far left, we have the description for each one of your revenues, and we have them totaled out by local taxes, local optional taxes, and your license and permits. Each one of your funds, it shows the total: general fund, courthouse, jail, debt, capital, highway, schools, and total. It comes down and you see the gray areas it will show on the far right, such as your total local taxes or your license and permits. This actually gives you a breakdown by fund. The next one's another table that shows pretty much the same thing, except it's actually the current year. Well, I mean, the first one was what we budgeted with your original budget back at the beginning of 25. This is what we're estimating you're actually going to receive. So, for instance, if you follow down here, here's your descriptions again. You go to your current property taxes, and we would follow across respecting the school funds. The general fund is receiving about $45.9 million, schools about $77.7, and the county about $154. If you compare it to the other, you can see it's about 152. We go to the next table, and it's the same pretty much table again, except it just shows your variance. And on the next one, we're going to bring all these together. So you go down here, and here's your description. Here's your amount by fund, and here's your total. Here's the most important thing on your whole slide right here. 7.7, this means how much excess revenue you got in local taxes. And 479, this is how much extra you got in your license and permits. If we go on down, here is your summary of variance. This is the same table again. It gives you a description of each kind of your revenue, your local taxes, your local optional, your license. It gives you the total for each one, but it gives you the even summary where you can tell what's going on. Here's the amount we budgeted originally in your budget. This is how much we had estimated. This is your variance in dollars, and this is your variance in percentage. The most important item here again is you've got 7.7 and 3.3 some odd percent of extra revenue in $479,000. So in summary, you're doing very well. But let's look at it a little bit closer, and we're going to look at some of the larger ones and to keep things down to a minimum. We're only going to look at your large variances to show you how we got here. And what I mean by large variances is anything over $1 million. Is everybody following along so far? So basically, all your details about funds is on the other. So if you want to see how much, for instance,
We came in $8.1 million higher.
Oh, and we'll show you why in here predominantly. I mean, if you want to say, for instance, how much goes to the schools, you can go to one of your earlier and see it, but it's going to be hard for you guys to follow along with the front. So back forward. So let's look at your property taxes, and we can kind of go through. That one's got a $1.7 million variance. This is a little table I created for you to follow on. This is a description of all the pieces that goes into your revenue projection. This is what we budgeted. Same as your earlier table. This is what we estimated we're going to receive conservatively, and this is the variance. To kind of bring this down a little more digestible, I'm going to break it into a few pieces and look at these first. This is back when we set the budget. That was from the summary assessment, which is the assessment on all the real personal property in the county, where we multiplied it out and came up with your property tax. That's what actually dropped into the property tax rolls, about a $1.2 million variance. That's because of the timing difference, because the assessor's office continues to pick up property. We can estimate these amounts, but the risk you got, they continue to pick up and to drop property. We estimate additional, we may be short. So historically, I've stuck with them once we've got them, and all I do once we set the numbers, I go by and I keep looking through summary assessments as long as they're positive. In the past, I've always let those alone. We could go back and capture some of that, but you still run the same risk if we come in July and I use a summary assessment and they have a lot of downward adjustments, you may come in short. The next one is public utilities, and I've got you a table here. Something to think about public utilities, they are not assessed by our assessor's office. They're assessed by the state of Tennessee. We received zero information about those until December of your actual operation year, when we get the actual tax rolls. I've called the state, they will not provide us anything. So, looking at these numbers, what we budgeted was last year's amount, $2.4 million, brought in 2.5, $141,000, about 6% extra. If you look at this, what's interesting, these are all your
adjustments is your tax rolls, and this is how the amount varied over time. But if you take all these variances, it only goes to 1.37%, or a total of $70,000 from all the way back in 14, and the difference of those two is 3.4%. So that's where you pick up some money, but probably about the best we're going to do is use prior years. We can estimate numbers, but the problem is you've got quite a bit of variance, and we need to stay really conservative. The next one is your uncollectability rate, and does everybody understand what I mean by that? Because some of you may think total uncollectability rate, but that's not what we're talking about. What these percentages are here is how much of your property tax for the current year is not collected. So, for instance, we have this property tax levy in 2024. We brought in 97.91% before the end of the fiscal year. Okay? Because, we see these numbers back in the past, I budgeted this right here on 3%, and we're estimating that on 2.75. If you notice, this collectability, non-collected percentage went down year over year. There's two reasons. One, the trustee's office has done a really good job and done better and better. Number two is we've had a relatively good economy since right here. That's the end of the Great Recession. So the problem is I'm using 3, estimated 2.75. Looking at this, you would think I was significantly estimating too much non-collectability, but there's no guarantee we can get back up into these numbers. This one's your next one, and we're going to look at these adjustments. That's the other big part left. We can look at that when we see it, but that's $236. The tax-free, what I did for the tax-free is I took last year's and multiplied it by 120% because you have a reappraisal. When you're in a reappraisal, generally your property's going to be frozen, so you think that number would go up. Well, it actually went down, so you picked up about $205,000. These numbers right here make up very specific things. This is your current property. The property tax roll is actually on the tax rolls. This number here and this number, the trustee actually got those adjustments from the assessor's office, so those are true adjustments. So right now there's about $200,000 net down adjustments. This $1,057,000 here is actually the amount still to the Board of Equalization. It's never been cleared up one way or the other. I think based on what I'm hearing, plus based on history, that, quite a bit of this money we may get anyway, which would make that number even better. Because if you look, these right here are the average adjustments after the tax roll is set. So far, we've had about $200,000 down, which is somewhere in this range, the upper range. We got about $1,057,000 less than what I'm hearing from the assessor's office, and based on our history, we're probably going to pick up some of that money. We're going to win several of those. So that 1.7 may go up significantly more. But right now, we have no guarantees, so I wouldn't recommend those information we capture.
So the right side, the parentheses is we lost. Mm-hmm. We never collected that money.
No. This is talking about collectability on this. This is your tax roll, okay?
Okay.
And this is your budget. These are actual numbers, right? Uh-huh. The assessor's office so far this year has picked up $350,000 more of profit.
Why?
Because they found things that weren't added, got added on, find timing. You just keep adding stuff when you find it. You've got 38 or 39,000 parcels. We've got thousands and thousands of parcels.
Right.
So they're going to keep picking up. At the same time, they find some, because any large reappraisal, you're going to find some natural errors. So you're going to have some down. So these 2 years have out a little over $200,000, okay? Mm-hmm. These have actually came down from the assessor's office as true adjustments. These are sent to the Board of Equalization still to be on appeal. This, after the tax roll set all the way to it's turned over to Chancery Court, is how much this has been adjusted each year. I keep up running total for each year. So say, for instance, 2025 until it was turned over to Chancery Court, the total downward adjustment was $202,000 less than that. That year you picked up $445,000 too. So based on history and plus, we win a lot of our appeals, there's a good chance we can keep a lot of that money.
So that negative 202,894 will probably reduce, because that's based on appeals.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
But a lot of that's going to end up being carryover because, you don't just sell it today and collect the money tomorrow.
No,
it's going to be carryover.
This right here, we're going to leave out there till we know what happens.
Yes.
And we think we're probably going to get it. So you're going to have more than likely a windfall next year, but we don't know that, so you don't want to bank it. Right. You don't want to be paying payroll with the windfall that we may or may not get. So we come over here, this is clerk and master's collection. Does everybody know what I mean by clerk and master's collection?
I know the department.
Okay. So basically what happens to property taxes, collected, it becomes delinquent. You go to the next year, if it is not paid, it's turned over to Chancery Court. Two things happen, they collect it in Chancery Court, and then ultimately, if they don't collect it, we do a tax sale and it's sold. Look at this right here. This is what we budgeted this year's collections on. This is how much we brought in. Anybody other than Mr. Sickler know why we brought in all this extra money?
Because we sold the property.
We had a tax sale this year, and we don't know how the tax sales were gonna be. If it's gonna be carried over next year, there was some issue until Mr. Sickler and the good sale. They told us this year had a very successful sale, so we picked up a lot more money. That's how I'm saying. And then your payment in lieu of taxes, this is one of Mr. Shows, like I said, if you look right here, we picked up an extra $1.3 million. It's almost exactly the same amount as the Facebook payments. The reason being is the IDB one from Gallatin has made the contention that they don't necessarily require to pay the tip money. We're not saying we agree with that in any form or fashion, but I'm not opposed to that until that's settled. So your extra $1.3 million here has not been budgeted this year, next year. That's the Facebook payment.
So, that, if they're making a payment in lieu of taxes because the property is owned by the industrial.
That's how they do it.
So, who determines what their payment is? That's figured in the beginning?
With the industrial development.
And so, that goes into the tax.
That's what the IDB one for Gallatin's been saying is, they're not required to pay a payment with taxes in the county, they can do anything they want. And that's when Mr. Show said that would be, he'd be happy to sue. If that would be, this year they did turn it over, and it was materially within the budget out of tax. But I did not budget those because they were saying that last year I did not have enough data. This coming year I don't have enough data, and they've been saying that, so that sale, I don't think it's approved the budget that amount to the sale. So now that's something you may want to discuss at the next budget.
That 787.5, we just received that?
Which one are you talking about?
In other schools?
Yes.
Is that 787.5? I heard it like last week that we finally got that. Is that?
Well, it was a little earlier than last week. Yeah, that's the Facebook page right here. That amount, the total Facebook, it's a little over that $1.3 million excess.
And that was a total since they started doing business?
Yes, sir, that's my understanding.
Okay, so they caught up?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
And then sales tax, the last item we're going to discuss, we picked up about $1.9 million or 3.78%. And this is what we're looking at sales tax. If you look at your sales tax, the gray bars, this is the amount, this is your year. The large gray bar is the amount that's now given to the school department, or it has to be used for education. It's the second half of the unincorporated, and it's the second half of the city. This is the first half of the unincorporated. Well, let's go in there and dive a little deeper into the trend line. That's some things we need to look at. This number right here, and most of you several of you probably know why we have this big problem here. Because we all did the same thing. We used to go online, and we bought things that did not pay sales tax. The state changed that a couple of years back, and it made this big skew. Well, the reason we don't want to follow that trend line is a couple of things. Number one, that's skew, and we all recognize these years here. 2008, 2009 was our last major recession, and then we had a small one somewhat in this county in 2001. You can see that one around the country. Another thing you may want to look, we've had these very almost consistent 6 and 7, 5. If you look there at 4.3, and this year we're estimating 3.2, 3.5. So we are seeing a lot of downward pressure right now, and we're going to go to the next slide, and I can show you where we're really feeling the most. We'll have a couple slides back. This kind of gives you an idea of what happened the last recession. This table shows you the collections by month. This is that first half unincorporated, that's the unincorporated and the cities, and this is the total. This is how much, like for instance, December 2008, that's what percent it was in 2007, the year before. All these red marks were during the recession, we were collecting 94, 95% of the year before. This is what we've looked at over the last 3 years. You notice how nice and consistent? And it's that way between those two marks, but we're seeing these. We are starting to see some numbers that drop sporadically below last year, which tells us we're facing some pressure, and we did see one last year.
Any idea?
While we're seeing that, because of inflation and the economy, and most of the predictions are the economy will slow next year. We've already started, or like I said, we've already started slowing, but our economy, for a better word, has been booking it. You look at those 6-7% we've been booking it, our economy's starting to slow down. That's why I said we need to budget 2% or maybe less next year. And right now we got about 2 in there. If you look at this is the two things that caught my attention. This is your biggest season, and there's a time lag for us getting it, so that's Christmas. These gap statements, if you look between these color lines and your writing orders, are the amount of growth between years during Christmas, how much extra spending. If you look, the green is this year, blue is last year. We had a nice little gap until Christmas, and then that number closed in. My theory is, and it's probably a pretty sound one, is because of inflation, people didn't have to be for Christmas this year. They spent money. So their spending along has been skewed. People spend. You know, like we all try to do. You get into Christmas, you're like, I don't want to build debt, and you cut back on things you didn't have to have. That's my theory. And it probably holds pretty sound. You come back in here because this right here would be after Christmas, and if you look at this, you actually get below last year and came back up. And this is what we've estimated for the rest of the year. This is your actual collections, and these are the exact same amount as last year. Looking at that, we can back up here. We're probably going to receive that much or more, but there's no guarantee you have 1 month below. But I think it's a good estimate for the rest of our year. Does anybody have any questions?
Good job, that's pretty spot on, by the way. I mean, within $2 million, that's
Yeah, our revenues were good, but
versus estimate.
it looked like a whole lot of money, but we come pretty good on the revenue.
All her idea, so I'm gonna. That's why she left off my name from last time. She was getting all those spot on.
If you doing that, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, does anybody have any questions on that? Number 3 is one we need to look at much closer. It's the continuing appropriation resolution. If we go into July, what happens is I'm authorized to let departments spend $112. If there's anything like large capital or anything, you, as a commission, have to specifically approve that. If we pull out the appropriation resolution, I think it's on page 31 through 32. I have it in my hand, but I've also received 2 emails I'll read to you of departments requesting items to be added.
Already?
Well, to be added to this continuing. They have projects that are ongoing, they need to continue into July. If you read through here, here's your continuing appropriation resolution. And we can put these on the screen if it's easier, I can just read them aloud.
Go ahead.
You do have them on the screen or just read them aloud?
Just read them.
Okay. If you look, these are all the items that the departments have requested. The first one, we have the Resource Authority bond. They're building the transfer station, so we anticipate we're going to need more than 112. We want to continue the Franklin Street project because we're finishing the parking garage. New shop line, it is SR 258. I was correct on the number. Should just look there. The courtroom build out, we have got the right now we've actually got the architectural started. It was in this year's budget. That's something you guys need to look at. Are we planning to move forward with that? That's something you'll have to determine as a commission, because we're asking to continue with the restricted fund balance. There's an ADA grant that we want to continue with the amount that was budgeted for it. The Brown House has some stuff going on. We want to continue with what's available on those projects. We have a broadband ready grant that we want to continue on. We're in the middle of it. And then we have several ARPA projects like the SWIG, the water line, the health department, the drainage, other projects that we've got ongoing that's budgeted that we want to continue on in July. Because if you don't approve them, they basically stop. The next one, if you look on the next page, no, that's not, but that's not, and I'm going to read you 2 more that's not new money that they've asked to put out here.
Courtroom build out.
That was the one where you guys.
There's $100,000 in for architecture, right?
Right. This is what you got. We got to get clarification on this. We've got the architect working on it right now, correct?
Right.
The budget you're in right now has $2 million in it. Next year, you mentioned potentially removing that budget.
Right.
So do we just want to note on there continuing with architectural only until the budget's approved? Okay. So let's just note that on there.
Okay, now, item 2, Brown House that's money was given to
Yes,
us
sir.
by Mr. Brown.
Right, and that's what you guys and Gen Ops are trying to do work on it, so
Right.
if we've got POs, as of June 30, we'll continue, but if you've got anything like Gen Ops is approving or moving on this in July, and we don't have it on this, then it's not going anywhere to the budget's approved. So we can pull that, but it's gonna stop anything if there's not POs or contracts on it.
Okay, so we have to do all that before June 30th.
Yes, sir. We've gotta have contracts and POs out, or unencumbered amounts, you gotta give my, people upstairs permission to continue to work on these projects, or we
And that's what the
stop.
continuing resolution does.
Yeah, it does you 1/12, and then if it's anything more than 1/12, all these, we've gotta have permissions, explicit approval to move forward.
Okay.
So that's what I'm asking for now, and the one, our chairman had a really good point, that's one that he cleared up now, that you guys only wanna move forward on architecture only at this point on the courtroom.
Until we figure out.
Okay.
I know that's
Right.
Yep. The other two I've had mentioned is the drug task force receives money from seizures, and they have about $61,000, and it's money they do not have in the budget at this point, but they need to buy a car soon. They had one to tear up, and it's actually their money, so they're asking to add it on this list to spend.
It's not anywhere in our packet, right? You're just.
No, they sent it
okay.
to me after this packet was prepared. They had a car motor, my understanding, blow up, so they're going to be carless in the month of July if we don't approve this.
You said 61,000.
Yeah, but we don't need to say, we just need to say spend the restricted, what's the thing called? It's from the U.S. Treasury, and it's called Justice Funds, to allow them to spend their, justice funds on purchasing and outfitting a new, I think it's called interdiction card. I think that's the word verbiage they use. Is their exact request. Right here. For interdiction and any materials on it. And then the other request I've received, and there's only two, and it would go on this first list over here. The thing's already budgeted. The Sheriff's Department's doing a camera refit for animal control and the jail. They're in the middle of the project. We bid part of it. We're working on it at this point. There's $209,743.76 unencumbered in the local capital. They're asking to be allowed to use that under the continuing appropriation resolution to continue on with this project. Otherwise, it will stop in July 2. They did part of it. That's what's left.
Do we need to individually go through those, or do we just say, hey, this is what with those two added, we're good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the old one. Then the other one's what David was asking. These are things people are requesting that aren't necessarily in the budget right now. Toby sent down a request to spend $11,000 for a road superintendent on some radios. The issue we're running into is the county commission's meetings on June 30, so he technically can't do that. So the only way he can do it is if you put the highway department to replace broken radios, $11,000 of his restricted fund balance, he can continue to move forward. Because he has a request later in the packet, but I was going to discuss that issue. So if you look back in item 6B1, that's where a road superintendent requests to use the funds. But the problem we've got is we're not going to approve that to June 30. In the evenings, there's no way for him to do that. So he'll have to wait till the budget's approved for that.
Continue with that.
So we'll leave that one on there.
Is everybody else good with that? Any objections? Yeah, just go ahead and let him, the 11,000 on this one.
Yeah, that way he can continue on in July versus, because we can't approve it to June 30. You can't anyway. The second one is some contributions for animal control they needed for a banner. And they actually made a request for an appropriation, but the same issue. The meeting's not the June 30, so if we're going to allow them to purchase that in July, it would have to be continuing. Or in this particular instance, you could tell them to wait and spend it in after the budget's approved.
Where is that?
It's the second item on page 32. All of these pretty much the same thing. Pretty much. EMA's got EMA's would if his is repair of a vehicle, he definitely.
But it's insurance recovery.
It's insurance recovery. We don't have time to spend it. And the other one's all the opioid projects that's been approved and that are ongoing, and we're going to have to stop if we don't.
Any objection if we add all these to the COI?
There's only one recommendation I'd make, if I may. That highway department one that's also on here, I would just, as part of your motion, have some verbiage that pending passage by commission. I'm sure it will, there won't be a problem, but, and then I can rope all these into one.
So make a motion, we pass this continued resolution with the additions of the task force, sheriff department camera project, and the specifics on page 32, the highway, sheriff, EMA, and opioid.
And that's gonna pull 3 items off your agenda later, but I'll tell you when we get to them.
With the stipulation that it gets passed through commission. Did I say that right? Okay.
Also move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
The next item is just a thing telling that the financial statement memos will be available to the county commission, and it just needs to be forwarded on for docketing with the county commission. I don't know if we really need a vote or just tell me to forward it. Item C is transfers, and they are all payroll related. There's nothing really out of the ordinary, it's just usual cleanup because you've got a large county. And then item C1 is payroll, C2 is just other interbudgetary, but none of them's new money. Can we group
Are
on that?
you gonna wanna do those now?
Yeah, these probably need to be voted.
I'll
Do we need to
go ahead and
wait a
vote,
second?
group and approve.
There's transfers.
Second.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Do we need to do waive second reading or anything like that?
This is interbudgetary, so there's no, second on it. Don't go to the commission.
Did you rope 2 into that as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Moving on to old business, I do not have anything on the city of Gallatin unless you.
Let me tell you where we're at.
Yep.
If you look on page 55, I had, one of our project managers actually send an email. We are looking right now, and that was about over a week ago, about 2 to 4 weeks for that to be completed. When I talked to Mr. Shove, we sent him copies of the contracts and POs, and I believe he was gonna try to get in touch with the Gallatin mayor to discuss the, amount due.
Perfect. Sounds like it's moving along.
Yeah, it's almost done, I mean, as far as laying all the facts.
Great. All right, election commission budget issues. Long, you wanna talk about this? I mean, basically, we've gotta figure this out. That's the email attachment.
Yeah,
Highlight on it.
and I'll be happy to discuss it. This is the issue that we've really got right now, and we really gotta think about this close. The first 2 issues are salary. So if it's an employee worked, the overtime, we're due it under Fair Labor Standards and state law. The second one is election workers, which could fall back under Fair Labor Standards and state law. The other issues, based on the comments from the committee, and I just think logistically, I don't think the commission wants me not paying election workers. I did attach an email from Miss Ashley. She said one of the reasons it's running over is the weight of the machines. And she also did make a comment on one of the emails attached for basically Mr. Long needs to handle this. So I think she's put forward that she wants me in some form to try to handle this. But the way I'm looking at it, and then the other $6,000 was actually on a P card for moving the election machine. So when we get the payments, they're already paid. My thing is, I think right now the most prudent action would be is to actually adjust, since it's involving election workers and payroll. Is to send it forward to adjust the budget, and if the county commission or the budget committee considers it inappropriate to forward it on over to legislative to deal with overrunning the budget.
You can't not pay them.
I don't think I really have a choice. There's dozens and dozens of election workers, it's hard to get. They've physically been there, so the amount's due to them. The employees, as far as we know, we've got timesheets, we're physically there. I'm not making any kind of accusation or even hint that they didn't work. So at this point, these items are due, and the other one's a P card charge for moving the machines. Right now, we do not think there's enough money in her total budget. There is a request later for $10,000 of the insurance in the 225 and with other insurance. So we think she's at least $22,000 over her budget.
I guess that's my understanding of what's going on is, I'm with Commissioner Harrison, we've got to pay them, and there's no way around that. But
Already paid them.
How is it okay, what process is in place when you have a department head that says, I don't care what budget you have?
You send it to legislative to see if you want to litigate. That's where you're really at from violating the budget law. That's the question is, if they don't have justification, that's where you're at. I mean, am I looking at it wrong? That's it. There's a budget law.
My confusion is it a failure to properly budget on her end, or that department's end, that it was
that wrong? Because I don't remember cutting that.
No, that's the one where we put in here the comparison of where it started out, lower amount got increased. Miss Ashley's was actually slightly less than the budget, but it's went more than both. She's saying that the new machines, because of the weight, and a lot of people that do your elections are elderly, and she's saying she don't want one elderly individual, and I can see, kind of see that, carrying these machines, so she wants two people carrying them, it's costing a lot of extra. That's what she told me on her email, and I'm not the management of the department, I'm not involved in the management end, so I can't confirm or deny that. But that's what Miss Ashley told me. But that was on the email she sent to me that I did put in your packet tonight. And then the other thing from Miss Ashley, she did say that basically, in not so many words that you can read the email, that she wanted me to handle it. So I think at this point,
She's gonna come back for another hearing, right?
on the regular budget, yes.
So, probably just need to make a motion to go ahead and approve this and address these other issues during the budget hearing. Would be my thing.
Do you think she'll show up?
I think she
can't
would
imagine
take the
it.
day.
I'm gonna make a motion to go ahead and approve this, so we can get a motion on the floor for proper discussion, so.
What are we approving?
The $92,599.
Okay, so that's the total.
Just this, yes.
Okay. And I have a question. I need to recap. Once we've been refusing to increase her budget because she had money in her budget to pay for the labor.
We don't think there's enough in total now.
And we don't think, so we think now we're 92,000.
No, I think right now I think she's about 32 short, and there's a $10,000 adjustment over requested in the insurance, because you guys usually cover insurance. So about 22. But at the same time, this is just our rough estimate, and I'm not the management of the department. If I was some kind of administrator over the department too, in some functions, I can tell you, I'm not involved in her management. So my thing is, I can tell by looking at her request, involves $52,000 for election workers, and it involves $22,000 for overtime. Her overtime's over by 6, but I don't know all of her comp balances. She may have a bunch of comp that needs to go out. I get to
Yeah, I also understand you say you've already paid them.
We've already paid the election workers, because the comment was in here several times during the budget committee, go ahead, make sure we do not fail to make payroll, we'll deal with it afterwards. So I went ahead and do that was number one. So I was really in a couple of things. I've heard that in the other issue, do I potentially violate other federal and state laws, or do I violate the budget at this point? It looks like this is the less of the two, because if I don't pay election workers, I just feel it's really going to blow up.
Okay, so what comprises the 92,599? Where
She's got $52,000 for election workers, $22,780 for overtime. She's got part-time of 9. And
Where is that showing?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mr. Becker, it's on page 77. This is Miss Ashley's request. No, sir. This is her request she sent back to April that was denied. Looking at it, I'm not sure about her part-time request or any of them. I wish Miss Ashley was here tonight to discuss it a little more.
How do you have that, much overtime?
I guess it was
What
during
are
the
you
election.
doing in that office for that amount of overtime?
I think most of that was accumulated during the presidential election through comp time, is my understanding, but that would be a question for Miss Ashley. And you may want to request Miss Ashley to come to the commission and talk about this. I mean,
Mr. Chairman? Yes, sir. The box below, 327-2025, overtime election workers and PT lines under projected due to unanticipated situation required additional staffing, 2 assassination attempts. What? Who is
Long, maybe, I questioned that last time.
I have no idea about her description. That's the description she's seen us.
I don't know what that had to do with.
anything?
I guess she was just saying there was a larger than average presidential election.
More security.
She was talking about attempts on Trump.
My assumption.
There was one, but I don't know.
Well, this says here, with an unauthorized individual entering an early voting site.
Oh.
2 assassinations, that's gonna be Trump. There's
One where he got shot, and one where they tried to get him.
Right.
So Mainly, now, I'm just speculating, I have no idea, but I'm guessing that she probably hired additional staffing due to situations that may have happened elsewhere. That she was wanting to provide additional security. I don't know.
So would that have been
Just
sheriffs
speculating.
or local police? Where the
I think it would depend on the jurisdiction. Honestly, I don't know. But the key is, we've already paid them, so we got to appropriate it.
And you're in June, and we're not.
I think I agree with Mark. We have no option on some of this, but I am to a point on this in the future to go to the mat with this. We cannot allow a department in county government to be totally out of control like this department. And if it takes litigating, I'm prepared as one of 24 votes to vote that way, but we have a serious problem beyond what we have to do here tonight to be thinking about in the future.
I agree with you, and that's what I was saying earlier, what teeth do we have? I mean, it seems ridiculous that we spend all these days, hours, months at this point for budget hearings to set for this department that says, Mr. Long, you figure it out.
But all of our discussion, not just speculation.
Right.
There's nobody to ask the question.
We've got a motion and a
Not
second,
yet,
so go ahead and approve this, since we've already paid it, we can allocate it.
Well, can I make one comment? This is the request from Ms. Ashley, the attached. Some of the election workers, based on working, would require benefits, and so would overtime. So this will put, as far as I can tell, her budget in, as far as total, it won't be negative. But the question is, I cannot adjust salary line items without your approval. So if you guys approve it on the 30th, I would actually have authorization to work with this Ashley to line up those line items. We know they're not correct, but we need to line them up with her. Or she's put $52,000.
They don't need additional money.
No, I don't think additional money. I think basically we're gonna need to take some of the overtime, part-time, or some of these other line items, put them out in Social Security, Medicare, and retirement.
So do you need the motion adjusted to
Just,
reflect that?
well, when you do your motion for the commission, just give me authorization to work with Ms. Ashley to fix any line item issues.
But you don't need
Does
that
that
right
not
now?
need to be tonight, though? Wouldn't that tonight carry over to the commission?
Yes, put in the resolution to give me.
So we should do it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this committee can allow line item adjustments too, so just adjust line items, yeah.
You need to repeat that.
Well, what I would put, when you put into attach the resolution adjustment and give her a total adjustment of 92 whatever, and also allow for minor, for the finance director to work with Ms. Ashley for minor adjustments to clear up any issues with related benefits through line item adjustment.
I'm fine with that, my second's fine with it.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Request from Financial Management Committee to appropriate $60,000 for the general fund, for the finance director's service. This is the second reading.
Can I say a few things about it?
Does anybody have any questions before you say anything? Does anybody have, I don't think you need to say anything. Nobody has any questions? I got it.
No, I'm kind of concerned.
You already had your turn. Yes, sir, Mr. Becker.
Well, I mean, I guess, is there a motion to approve, I guess?
So moved. I make a motion. There may not be a second, but we can't discuss it if we don't have a motion.
I'll second it for the discussion.
So, well, I was gonna ask Mr. Long, what are your thoughts?
Just a couple of concerns. One, if we're gonna do it, I say we need to move it to county commission. And number two, there's a statute for professional services. I think it's a stretch calling it professional service. So if we move forward, I'd ask a proposal here. I think it would need an RFQ. It's actually only $30,000, so we need to bid it. And then the third thing is the commission and committee needs to determine, or be really clear, because you put it in the county commission, I can do an RFQ. Who's going to be doing the work and the selection, make sure we're doing it correctly, if it makes sense. We're not trying to stay out of the middle of any of the other disagreements on any of the stuff. So what I'm saying is, I think the budgeting of it should be over in the county commission, and I'm happy to work with the RFQ, but we need to be clear what we're doing, who's going to be doing all the selection and all that, if that makes sense.
Mr. Thomas.
I'd like to know from Mr. Long if he had any problem with the DEI section
run it, that we don't necessarily, my thing is you choose the best candidate.
That's what I would say.
Blindly, I mean, 9 times out of 10, after I've seen your resume, I know who the best candidates are. If there's not something to change my mind, you've got the job. So there's no me telling any of that stuff because I have no idea.
Right.
And the only reason I change my mind if I don't understand something on your resume, or I think there's some underlying issue with you that you've got some problem you couldn't do the work.
Mr. Horn, did you just say it's gonna be 30,000, not 60,000?
This first quote here says 29 plus advertising. You probably want a little more advertising. But I think we need to RFQ it for something similar. But at the same time, we need to make sure who's clear on that we're moving forward in this direction, if that makes sense. I don't want to weigh in on any of the other disagreements.
It's not to exceed that, they're 29.5, roughly.
But we know there's been some disagreements or back and forth on selection, so I didn't want to get involved in the middle of that, if that makes sense. That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh, sorry. Like, keep tacking on, like, wasn't this, he gets done and then he adds another, wasn't this money in our upcoming budget?
That was there was some money for chronos. There was originally some money to do like job descriptions and do a salary survey that was pulled back out. But no, this one wasn't discussion. This is one he wanted to go. But my thought is you may want to discuss it further, do an RFQ, put it in next year's budget, but first make sure you have everything lined up before we move forward.
And what's the timing of your projected timing of your retirement?
Sometime between 1st of November and June.
1st of November and June.
The way the contract's written, I could give you a notice as early as August. But I have to give you a notice and. Oh, yeah, notice. I'll be out by June.
And what, so there's like a 90-day notice?
60 days.
Okay.
After a certain day.
All right, that's all.
For now, I just have one comment to make. As I was looking at this proposal, the DEI also did stick out to me, but also every one of these positions in here that have been filled, none of them are in the state of Tennessee. None of them. Which to me is kind of interesting.
So they're in Texas, I think, based.
I guess everything's bigger in Texas, but
I said maybe your thoughts to write an RFQ to get the things out of this you want. Because it has some really good stuff in there, but there's the only, if you don't bid, we've got. That's the only one that quotes back. I sent out to a couple of them, and this one responded.
Oh, you've already done the RFQ?
No, we haven't done an RFQ. We just said, hey, show us what you got.
Okay, if we've still got to do the RFQ, that just added more layers to this, so it's my recommendation that y'all move on this as quick as possible.
But you don't need a budget this year, it needs to be in next year's budget because we can't RFQ it in the budget before June 30. And then the same thing, we're gonna need to figure out, once we do the RFQ, who's gonna select the RFQ, who's gonna work, I mean, and my thing is that probably all needs to be maybe sent back to financial management to discuss it.
and just one more point, even if we went with a search firm, it would not preclude somebody and I don't know if there's anybody out there, but if somebody in this county was interested in the position, they could still be vetted for this position.
Right, if they met the statutory qualifications.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Long, were you hired by National Search Firm?
No, I had, they put it into GGFOA, and then actually, I didn't really look at the advertisement, somebody reached out to me to discuss the wonderful things about Sumner County, and I can say honestly, it's a great county. Well, I mean, you guys are a great county, it's been, good to be here, I mean.
You serve us well as finance director, and it brings me to this point, before we spend $30,000, $60,000, why don't we cast a net through the professional organizations and see if we find somebody in Middle Tennessee or in Tennessee or even outside Tennessee?
My understanding was we'd already done that, have we not?
We have not done that yet.
There's a way, because I've been looking online to see what's out there. But there's GFOA, they got a place you can advertise, and a couple of other ones. There's one called governmentjobs.com, and I looked at it, but I think it's honestly hooked into some kind of HR package. So I don't know we can use that one, but I'll get somebody to try to explore to see if we can post it somewhere.
We can go to some professional sites that you would belong to, those organizations. It just seems to me that we could cast that net first, and not spend a long time on it, not a year, but cast that net, and then if that net doesn't catch anything, well then let's go with the search firm.
I agree with the mayor. I'm pretty confident in David's ability to look at resumes and interview people. He's done a really good job in this department. So he'll know whether any local talent is going to be good enough for, you know, the complications of this county. So I agree.
I have one hesitancy, and I understand what the mayor's saying, I understand what you're saying, but I went through an experience, at one point at the Board of Education with, you know, they handle the vast majority of the county's money. And we made a horrific mistake locally. And it just didn't fit. It was awful. And I just on something with finance and this much money and what we're dealing with, once you dig a hole, you don't have any way out hardly. I just tend to say, let's go to find the very best person. It may be if you spend $30,000 and the very best person, I have no problem with it. If they're just down the street here on Main Street, hire them. But if the very best person is in Minnesota or Virginia or Florida, I would have no problem in hiring them. But when you start talking about this much responsibility in county finance, you can make a terrible mistake if you're not careful.
I can tell you the number one thing that draws me to the county. To be honest, I was happy to Green County. Somebody told me about the county here. I had 2 children, and East Tennessee is good, except, you know, the jobs aren't as good as Middle Tennessee. So my thing is the reason I moved is I knew my kids were going to need jobs, I'll be honest. That's why I came to Sumner. Looked like a good fit, talked to the staff. It's been good since I've been here, but my main move was to come here because of future employment for my children. So you got to have some things to offer. So somebody's got kids, they want kids that can get jobs. Middle Tennessee's economy is a lot better than a lot of areas. That was a plus that draw me. It wasn't necessarily as much the county as that.
I agree with Chairman Hyde's sentiments, but I also trust that David would say none of these people are good enough for what we need to happen here. That you know, we can throw out that fishing line now. We get 10 takers, and I have total confidence in David's ability to say that none of these fit the bill. We need to go national, that he will.
If I could say something, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I agree with you. I have all the faith in the world in David, but I don't want to put all that responsibility on David. If he makes a huge mistake or something, if he says, I think this is the right person, it's our job to decide who is the right person for us. And I don't even think David wants that kind of responsibility. But I want him involved, certainly with financial management, but I just don't think that, we can put that responsibility off on someone else.
How about if you want me to, and all parties are agreed, because there's several parties involved right now, we'll just advertise out based on the job description and see what kind of bids you get to bring all the applicants back to the committees and the mayor and everybody involved. Because you got the mayor involved, you got the financial manager, whomever's involved.
Right.
That was my question, is there a way to do both?
need some money, so as soon as the budget's gonna be done in July. If you want me to, put some money in there for advertisement, we'll take the job description, make an advertisement, drop it at GFOA, and find out who else we can drop it at. Mine is right now, there's one out there used by a lot of government, I think it's hooked into an HR platform. And we don't have, I don't know, I can always email them and find out. I've seen it out there, I've been doing some things, and then you've got things like Indeed and stuff, but maybe somebody from there.
I think there's valid, from my opinion, I'm one of 24, but I think there's valid arguments for both sides of it, so I don't know why we couldn't do both.
Cast the net first and see what you get, and then if you don't.
How much do you think you would need for advertising?
I'll work out, see, I'll get a quote from GFOA, find out about that other one, look at Indeed. We advertise all the time with Indeed stuff, but I think we need to do it after the first of the year, we get the budget tied down, because we need to take a job description, write a really good thing to invite people here. Get your
First of what year?
Your fiscal year. He's not trying to push the January.
Honestly, that sounds like something tourism should be involved in. That's their whole job, is to market the county.
They have Marcus is up there, work on if we do.
And if you're saying that's what drew you here, it wasn't
my
job itself, it was the.
No, my job was good there. This one's similar to what I did there. The thing was, I started looking, and you guys have a much better economy. The job prospects for your children are higher than they are in East. I'm from East Tennessee. I like East Tennessee. Your kids are a lot more likely to get a job in Middle Tennessee, sure, than West or East. And you've always got to think about that.
So how long should we defer this?
I'll probably defer it until the budget's approved, and then, and I think probably because you've got your day-to-day work with the mayor on it, probably what we need to do.
I'll move to defer until the August budget meeting.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item D, funding for architect fees for GS1, General Sessions 1 Courtroom, 116 to 180.
He's working with the judge on it to try to get stuff back to Gen Ops, is the gist of that.
The only question I had. Okay, never mind. I thought this was the new courthouse, and this is the recovery court.
Yes, sir, and they're trying to get some quotes for the stuff that the judge needs, and right now they're trying to work with the money you allotted them for the architect, and they're gonna try to get it as quickly as possible back to Gen Ops to get it back here in July or August as early as possible. Because the judge is ready to move when he can get it.
So, motion? Motion approved. Second? Does anybody else have a second? No, go ahead.
Okay, what's going on there is we don't have an accurate as-built plan of the jail area. So, in order for Wald or any architect to give us a quote, we need to know what's there. And so, we're trying not to let this thing delay, but we had a meeting last Wednesday and it became very clear that what we had in drawings, there were walls that were not there that were shown on the plan and vice versa. So you can only get an accurate price if you know what you're dealing with. So at some point really soon, and I'm working with Dustin and Scott Shannon on this, we need to get an actual as-built. And so we'll be working forward on it, but I think
I think Wald came back with a much higher estimate because of that, and what they're trying to drill through right now. They came back with a higher estimate, we're not sure if it's right, so as the David said, it needs some time to explore that and get back to Gen Ops.
Yeah, we need to get it right, because it's gonna cost us a fortune if we don't.
So are you asking to defer it?
It'll go back to Gen Ops.
Yeah, let's refer back to, is it
Refer.
Well, what I would do, I think, when you say if it was me, and you can do whatever you want to, I would leave it under old business, because it goes to Gen Ops. After Gen Ops is coming right back here for appropriations. So right now, you leave it under old business till Gen Ops gets done with, and you won't have to report back in.
Jerry, you good with that?
Yes. Perfect. Item E, correction of payroll. Do we need to vote on that, or can we just leave it hanging out there?
Just leave it.
If you don't vote, it stays.
Correlation of payroll holdback issues.
I make a motion to defer. For a month.
Just leave it there.
We can just leave it there, yeah.
All right, so I just stay over the whole business.
Yeah.
Give time to look at it more.
Moving on.
Let them look at it more.
Is they might want it in play?
No, it can wait till budget.
Are we good?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Not doing something wrong.
Move to approve all
Well, on item 3A,
We need to pull some stuff.
yeah, item 6A3A, which is the 1327 for animal donations, that's the one that was added to the continuing appropriation. So it needs to be pulled, and then item, you know, it says EMA, which is item, they got it in item 2, but it should actually be item, well, I'm sure they're gonna remember that. But the EMA 3,663.26, that was added. And then item B under there completely needs to be removed, because it was also added for Toby.
So we need to do 1, 2, and 3B, and C, and D.
Okay, you need to do 1, 2, 3, B, C, D. And then I think that's it, the other two got pulled.
Move to approve all.
Got a motion and a second.
Question?
Yes, sir.
Tell me about the 870,000, is that reimbursement to us? Yes, sir. Okay, so that's money in. Right. And then the 89's a payback. What happened was on it, we got reimbursed for stuff that got written off. They gave us the money last year. We didn't have to pay it, but it's in last year, so we need the money to refund it to the state.
And we'll need to waive the second reading on these.
On all those, yes, sir.
I'll include that in my motion.
Well, not all, but I will.
Second, good with that? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Other items, we already did the GNRC, and then, item B is emergency purchase.
It's only the docket only, basically the air conditioning went out. We bought several years, we just need to do it as emergency because it's getting extremely hot in that building. Let's shut down.
Motion second.
Got a motion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
Do we need to
And then,
approve?
a second. Question real quick, Mayor, is there any, here that are not?
Sorry, all tax refunds, my apologies.
No, I just didn't know if you're like, hey, this is one, because I know we ran into this in the past.
Yeah,
When-
no, I can-
It looks like it has errors and audits, but I just want to make sure that we have that one. Motion to group and approve. Second, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? And one more motion.